This is a presentation to describe what the speaking test is like for pupils taking GCSE languages with the AQA board. The GCSE exam tests 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading and writing. You're entered for either the higher or the foundation tier, and the tier of entry will be exactly the same for all 4 skills. The decision is usually made in the 3rd week of February in Year 11. The speaking exam tests all 3 themes covered in the course. Theme 1, Identity and Culture, Theme 2, Local, National, International and Global Areas of Interest, and Theme 3, Current and Future Study and Employment. There are 3 parts in this speaking exam which are done in this order. Firstly, the role play. Secondly, a photo card, and that'll be on one of the 3 themes. And thirdly, a general conversation, and that will be on the 2 remaining themes. You will have an individual speaking exam with your teacher during a 5-week period in April or May of Year 11. The test will be recorded and sent to the exam board for marking. So has that sunk in? Could you now read the questions, then pause, answer them, then resume when you want to see the answers? Where do you go then on the test day? You'll go to 3 rooms, and it'll be in this order. Firstly to a waiting room, then a preparation room, and then an examining room. In the waiting room, you'll obviously wait, and you'll have access to your bags and notes. You can do some last minute revision if you want to. But you must leave all your stuff in the waiting room when you go to the next stage. You can't take any of your own notes with you. In the preparation room, there may be other students there as well, but obviously you'll not be able to communicate with each other. An invigilator will give you 2 stimulus cards, and each has 2 sides. Firstly, a role play card, that'll be one of 9 available. Then a photo card, again one of 9 available. And you'll also have an additional answer sheet where you're allowed to make notes, because you're not allowed to write on the cards. Now, we strongly recommend that you use one side of this for the role play and the other for the photo card. You can also make sure that you have a clear divider between each of the questions which you're answering. So that, for example, for the role play, you'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the photo card 1, 2, 3, with the space in between. You're not going to have any access to any reference, of course, in here. You have 12 minutes to prepare for the exam, and we recommend approximately 4 minutes on the role play, because you'll be preparing 4 sentences for that. You've actually got to say 5, but you're preparing 4 of them. And approximately 8 minutes on the photo card, because for each of 3 questions you're probably preparing 3 or 4 sentences. Don't spend time though preparing for the conversation. You'll have done a lot of preparation for that in advance. So let's look in more detail at the role play. The role play can cover any area in the specification, so it's across any of the 3 themes, just anything you've been taught. It will be a stimulus for you to say 5 sentences. 3 of them will be for you to make statements. There won't be a question mark in front of them or an exclamation mark. One of them will be a statement in response to a surprise question. That'll be indicated by an exclamation mark. And one will be for you to ask a question, and for that there'll be a symbol of a question mark before the word. When you're preparing, do not develop any answers, just stick to what is required. If you add more and it's not clear, there's a chance that your mark would be reduced. And again, can I remind you, when you're making those notes, space them out so it's really clear which sentence goes with which bullet point. Has it sunk in? Again, pause, read the questions, then resume to see the answers. On to the photo card and conversation themes. This is something which can sometimes cause confusion, so let's go through this. Okay, so there are 3 themes, and they are covered in the photo card, one theme, and the conversation, two themes. One theme for the conversation you nominate in advance, before April, and this will be the first half of your conversation. The two other themes are then covered in the photo card and the second half of the conversation. So for example, if you nominate theme 2 for the first half of the conversation, then either the photo card will be theme 1 and the second half of the conversation theme 3, or the photo card will be theme 3 and the second half of the conversation theme 1. So what are the possible combinations? There they are. Photo card theme 1, conversation themes 2 and 3. Photo card theme 2, conversation themes 1 and 3. Photo card theme 3, conversation themes 1 and 2. So as I say, before the test period, you tell the teacher which one of the 3 themes you definitely want to include in the conversation, and the other theme will be a surprise. So as we've said before, you can now be clear in your head as soon as you get the photo card which the theme is going to be in the conversation. Let's look in more detail at the photo card. Remember, the photo card will be on a theme which you've not nominated for your conversation. It will be a stimulus for you to respond to 5 questions from the examiner. 3 of the questions are printed on the card. You can see them down there. Qu'est-ce qu'il y a sur la photo? Est-ce que tu es allé à un mariage récemment? Tu t'entends bien avec ta famille? Pourquoi pas? So those are there already. But 2 of the questions you can't see, and they will be surprise questions. We'll look in much more detail at the marking criteria another time, but you do need to know that here, yes, you must develop at least 3 of your responses to the photo card if you want to get maximum marks. And by develop, a rule of thumb is to get in at least 3 verbs per question. But do make sure that any development doesn't contain anything which is not clear. So what about the conversation? There's no card for the conversation. In the conversation, the teacher will ask you questions, firstly about the theme you've chosen in advance. They'll always start with that. And secondly, the theme which is not on the photo card. And that way, all 3 themes are covered in the speaking test. So once you have the photo card, you'll be able to work out which themes the conversation will be on. While we're here, let's stress that you will need to develop any answers in the conversation part. But you'll not be using your preparation time for this because you'll have already done thorough preparation for all 3 conversation themes over the 2-year course. Again, has it sunk in? Pause, read the questions, and resume when you want the answers. Your teacher then, after your preparation time, collects you from the preparation room and takes you to the examining room, and we will of course always be encouraging and smiling. You take your cards and notes which you've prepared in the preparation room with you. You're not allowed to take anything else. You sit opposite your teacher and there'll be some sort of recording device there. Your teacher starts the recording and announces the exam, the centre number, your candidate number and your name. Then the role play starts, but you don't start speaking yet. Your teacher will start. So your teacher announces that you'll start with the role play. They'll say this in the target language. So in French, on va commencer avec le jeu de rôle numéro 4, for example. And then they say the introduction, which is on the card. Here, tu parles de la technologie avec ton amie française. It's the teacher then who says something before you say anything. So the teacher will say something which prompts your first statement. And can I really stress, you don't need to understand what the teacher has said. Don't need to listen to it really. You've already sorted out what you're going to say for the first statement. It can be quite confusing if you listen and then try and respond differently. So, as I say, question from the teacher and then you say the first statement. In this particular example, the second statement is a surprise question. So listen carefully and then you will answer. And occasionally one word is enough. And then there'll be another question and you say the third statement, another question and you say the fourth statement. And in this particular example, the question comes at the end. And that's where the teacher will wait for you to ask a question. You can read from your notes but be really, really careful about your pronunciation. So often, particularly in French, as soon as people see the word written down, they start pronouncing every single letter. And you know that normally you don't pronounce the ends of words. So be very, very careful if you do read from your notes. Your teacher will interrupt you if you seem to be misunderstanding the task, or if you're developing the answer unnecessarily and risk losing marks. And that's something which is actually recommended by the board. The role play takes 2 minutes, but actually there's no minimum or maximum for this. So it doesn't matter if you overrun. So you've done the role play. Next thing is the photo card. So again, it's your teacher who starts this. They announce the move to the task, something like "Et maintenant on va parler de la photo, lettre A." And then you don't have to start straight away. You wait for the teacher to ask the question. And it's always that question. It's always, what is there on the photo? Qu'est-ce qu'il y a sur la photo? You answer that first question, and you knew what the question was in advance. So this is where we really recommend that you develop all of the 3 questions that you knew. That's ever so important. So do about 3 or 4 sentences on that. And we'll do much more on this another time, but things like, there's no point in saying I like the photo, you don't get anything for that. This particular example is in colour. Actually, it'll be in black and white, so don't mention the colour of anything either. But you are encouraged to, you can conjecture, you can say, oh, I think it's hot because they're wearing shorts. That would be fine. So that's the first question. The second question will come out, and then you answer. Then the teacher asks the third question, which you know in advance, and you answer. And then comes the surprise. You have 2 questions where you don't know what they're going to be, and you answer. As I say, we'll talk about this in more detail, but the expectation there is not that you necessarily develop everything there. As long as you've developed your first 3 questions, you should be able to be eligible for full marks on this one. Again, you know what I'm going to say. You can read from your notes, but be careful about your pronunciation. Really important. The time limit for this has got a maximum. So for the foundation, we mustn't go over 2 minutes. For the higher, we mustn't go over 3 minutes. So that's really important. And you know, the teacher may interrupt if we can see you're just going on and on that first one, for example. We may interrupt so that we can get into the next, the other questions, because we've got to complete all 5 in that time limit. At that point, the teacher takes away your notes before the conversation, so you don't have any access to notes while you do your conversation. Hence why I said there's no point in doing any preparation for the conversation in the preparation room. You won't have the notes anyway. So there we are. We then move on to the conversation. The teacher has the conversation on 2 topics, and they will start with the one that you nominated. Et maintenant, la conversation, on va commencer par le thème que tu as choisi, which you've chosen, thème numéro 2, for example. They'll ask questions, and you'll answer. Then halfway through, there'll be a switch to the other conversation theme. And again, the teacher will announce that. Et maintenant, on va parler du thème numéro 3, for example. They ask you questions, and you do answers. Again, there is a maximum for this, so we have to time this well. For the foundation, it mustn't be more than 5 minutes. For the higher, it mustn't be more than 7 minutes. So the teacher must switch themes about halfway through to complete the task. So foundation, after 2.5 minutes, you must go into the next theme. Higher, after 3.5 minutes, again, go on to the next theme. You do have to ask a question. This is important. All GCSE exam boards are told that they must require you to ask questions in the plural. So for the AQA, you've asked one in the role play, and it's in the conversation that you will ask the other one. Of course, you can ask more if you want, but we must get at least these 2. And we have been told by the board that it's enough to say, after you've made a statement, et vous, and you, at the end of any answer that you give. Strongly recommend that you do the question in your first nominated theme, just to get it out of the way so that you're not worrying about whether or not you've asked a question or not. So what happens at the end? Oh, by the way, if you haven't asked the question, the teacher has the right to be able to say to you, est-ce que tu as une question pour moi? Do you have a question for me? At the end, the teacher says, end of test, then checks that the recording has worked in front of you. And if it hasn't worked, obviously we'd apologise profusely and you'd have to resit it at another time with different cards. Then you go back to the waiting room to collect your things without saying a word to anyone about the test. Can you tell anyone what the questions were? Absolutely not. Don't tell anyone what was in your role play or in your photo card. And at this point, has it sunk in? Again, read the questions, pause, and then resume. So at the end, I just hope that has been a helpful presentation for you. Can I urge you to make sure that you're familiar with everything so that you know what to expect and so that it seems familiar? To be honest, it can be quite a stressful thing to do a speaking test. It's a performance. So those of you doing music or drama will have the same experience there. You want to do your best because it is, after all, 25% of the mark for a course which actually, in a sense, you began in Year 7. And it's being assessed through 12 minutes of preparation and about 10 minutes of performance at the end of Year 11. So it's important that you become very familiar with the process, and that's why we're going through this now, and we'll be coming back to it again and again so that you'll instinctively know how to do this, what to expect, and you can concentrate on just making the best effective use of preparation time and the performance. As I say, I hope this video has helped. It's also available as a script and as a PowerPoint with speaker notes, as well as in this video form, so you can refer back to the information in whichever way you prefer. And finally, bonne chance, good luck.